Hello, everyone. So glad you're joining us here today. If this is your first time meeting me, I'm Ashley Koff. I'm a registered dietitian. Been doing this about 20 years. And the Better Nutrition Expert interview series is selfish, first and foremost, because I get to meet these amazing experts and ask them questions about their field and what they're doing. What I really want to dive into is the difference between what you might read about in research and what we actually experience in clinical practice or in our work or in our coaching work, which we'll talk about, so that we can give you tips and resources and application, and of course introduce you to a new expert. So I want to just remind you, if you're just finding us on YouTube and it's after we've been live, your questions are just as important. So go ahead and put the questions in the box. If you like what you're seeing, give us a thumbs up or share it with someone. And likewise, if you're watching us live right now, your questions, I would love the opportunity to be able to ask them of our expert. I may wait for a moment or two and let her get her thoughts out and kind of adjust it to the flow, but please ask those. And likewise, share this with your groups or with your friends if you feel that they can also benefit from the information, because that is our goal here, to reach more people with better nutrition. So, without further ado, Kat and I were just catching up because we actually had the opportunity to meet a couple of years ago, so I love that part. And we were also just talking about that her husband is in our Army, so we're so grateful to them and for their service and their community. He's over in Korea right now, so we get her live. And we were talking about also just sort of putting together a business, and what we really want to dive into today is the business of strength training and some of the, many of you may have heard about CrossFit. You may be CrossFit advocates. You may be working with clients who have done CrossFit and moved on from it. But we really want to put together what is the better nutrition approach for strength training and CrossFit. So welcome, Kat. It is awesome to see you again and to have you here joining us today.
I am so excited. I actually just got done. I just got in from working out and doing some CrossFit. So
awesome. Good. So yeah, it's very fresh in the mind. So you're a dietitian, and I want you to start off. I always like to start here with what we call a little bit of the lexicon of better nutrition and the topic area, because one of the things I think that challenges us today is when we have conversations or we read about things, people are using words with different meanings. So the couple of things I'm going to ask you to describe are, first of all, you're a dietitian and a coach. So we'll talk about kind of how you perceive both of those. And then we'll go into some definitions, because you're a level 3 CrossFit trainer, or you're not. You're not. You're. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So okay. So we'll understand what that part is and what that means. And then Jen is saying you're having trouble downloading the book. It's not available. Okay, Jen, we will get that sorted. That's her step 1 meal plan. If it's not available, we'll get you an email. We'll get everything sorted afterwards. I might have typed it in wrong. We could have all sorts of different things. So not to worry on that part. We're going to give you the guide. And so glad you were aiming to get it. So Kat, let's start with, as a dietitian, tell us a little bit about how you differentiate between a dietitian and a coach, and what you bring by bringing those two together.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. So I wanted to become a dietitian first off because of sports nutrition. And I kind of went all the way around, dabbled in different areas of nutrition. I was a clinical dietitian, but I found myself working again with athletes. And that is where my passion is, and really helping those athletes to not just have good nutrition habits like right then and there, but carry them on through life. With the methodology around CrossFit, it's not so much about being one of those athletes that you see at the games. It's the whole games is changing, especially this year in the open and how you get there. And really the focus is shifting more towards just physical fitness and being able to have that fitness throughout your life. And so that's something that I really can align myself with in the same way that I approach nutrition and nutrition coaching. And so when I got into CrossFit myself, it was when I was still a student, but once people found out that I was a dietitian, they were just asking nutrition questions and wanting to learn more about that. And as I kind of broadened out and kind of talked to more gym boxes, is what they're called, I found that the term nutrition coach resonated a little bit better than dietitian. For some people, they didn't know what a dietitian was. And for other people who knew who a dietitian was, their history working with a dietitian was a little bit different and not so much focused around the sport. And if it was focused around the sport, it wasn't so much around the habits. And so I'm very much like behavioral focused and not just about here are your macros or here are your numbers kind of thing. And so I love being a dietitian, but I sometimes introduce myself as a nutrition coach if I feel like it's going to resonate more, and then tell them, more information after that.
Yeah. Sure. You're like, and I have these letters after my name, so I'll,
yeah. But I really love the coaching aspect. I love being that, providing that coaching kind of support.
Yeah. So, for those people that have never been in the box and never trained there, I think there's a lot of myth and mystique about, CrossFit. So can you share a little bit about what it is and how your nutrition approach is focused on helping people optimize their CrossFit experience? Yeah.
Yeah, so whenever you go to a CrossFit gym, they're affiliates, and so they kind of have the same methodology, but there's a workout of the day. And depending on where you're at, whether you're a very elite athlete or you're an 89-year-old grandma, you should be able to do the same workout. Now, the difference is in the scaling. So if somebody is doing a 250-pound back squat, someone who is a lot older, who it would not necessarily be safe for them to approach that, their scale might just be sitting down on a box and then just standing up from there. So it's everything that is scalable, essentially. And so the coach will determine kind of where you're at and what is safe for you to do and scale appropriately. And so I think a while ago, several years ago, when CrossFit was kind of coming up, there were a little bit sometimes where people would go a little bit too hard. I know it was thought of as the workout or the kind of a workout that'll make you throw up. Like that was just part of it. Right. I personally have never thrown up during a workout. I've never gotten rhabdo or anything, but that is because of scaling appropriately and listening to my body ultimately. It's not about going hard all the time. I was listening to a really, really good coach on a podcast, and he was saying, if you're going 100% all of the time, you're competing essentially all the time, and that's just going to tear up your body. It's not good. And so there's different intensities and different kind of movements that work with those and goals for each of the different parts of the workouts.
Great. And I actually want to dive into that because I think what's so important is the notion, whether you're doing strength training and it's not CrossFit or you're in CrossFit, the notion of recovery, and how we help the body recover and that piece. And so let's start in on the nutrition side of things, because I did get a lot of questions from people. They're like, oh, you're talking to someone on the CrossFit side. I think there's this belief that maybe the popularity of CrossFit and paleo have sort of come up together, and now we're getting a little bit of the keto or a lot of the keto coming in on that space. Do you have to do a diet that ends in O if you are in CrossFit? Is probably the way to start it, or differently, how do you figure out what is what your nutrient needs, and how do you focus on that with a client? Yeah. So really my first and foremost thing, like whatever I start with, is looking at where they're at, their diet history, if they've weight cycled, if they've yo-yo dieted, kind of just their overall history. And from there, I'll make appropriate recommendations. So, but kind of taking a step back and approaching kind of CrossFit as a whole, there is different, there's some gyms people will do open gym and do a little bit more training, and just the regular CrossFit classes are usually 1 hour a day, several days a week. But we do need those carbohydrates to fuel ourselves and to get that recovery. And so whenever I do start working with people and give them kind of an idea of where to start shifting their diet,
they're often surprised, one, as to how much food that I'm telling them to eat, and two, how many carbohydrates that I'm telling them to eat. And of course, I just recorded a video yesterday talking about how I cut carbohydrates, and I was going to make more of the video showing how I cut a sweet potato and pineapple, and not necessarily cutting them out of my diet.
Nice.
But it's just, I talk about the importance of the carbohydrates and how they're not only for mental performance, your brain's first source of fuel and energy, but also your muscle. And so with that recovery, it's really exciting when I work with clients and they notice that not only their performance is improving by increasing the amount of carbohydrates or maybe shifting them better around their workouts, but also seeing better recovery and not feeling so sore and being able to get back to the gym, which is ultimately what they want to do and what we want them to do. So it's really cool.
Brilliant. And so I want to kind of go through the life cycle. Obviously, first of all, everyone is different. We should always say in every one of these interviews, this is not a prescription. The whole reason to introduce you to an expert is because we're talking about, what Kat just said here, which is she needs to assess you first and then figure out on that part. We also know where you are in your life and life stage, and all of that stuff is different. So all that being said, the key question, the things that I get, you mentioned the vomiting, right? So somebody said to me, what do I do? Like, for example, today you mentioned you got up and you have already done your workout. So how do you sort of figure out what do you have before and what might be a good time frame on a day that you're working out? And then how do you map out your nutrition afterwards or during? Yeah.
So there are a couple of different approaches that I generally lean towards, some mostly more than others. Two major ones. So kind of a overall breakdown around 40 to 50% carbs, 30 protein, around 20, 30 fat. And that's kind of, I try to help them to get the most carbohydrates before they work out and after they work out. If there's an athlete that is doing additional work, let's say they're doing an open gym and it's around 2 hours of lifting and working out hard, then sometimes we'll add an intra-workout carbohydrate. So whether that's in a drink form or some fruit, if they want to eat during it, that's up to them. But what I've also done and what I do with several of my clients right now is nutrition periodization. And so basically that is a set amount of protein, regardless of whether you're training or whether you have a rest day. And then carbohydrates are based on your activity level. So on a rest day, there's going to be a little bit less. And on a training day, there's going to be a good amount more. And then the remaining amount of calories that you need to survive and to thrive and to recover is really important. And that will come from fat. And so again, that's called nutrition periodization. And that's also really popular with CrossFit athletes. And for some, that is a little bit too much work. And so that's part of the assessment where I think about, okay, this is their history. This is what's going on. This is what they have coming up the next month. Let's try to make things a little bit more appropriate for them at this time.
And what's the role then? We'll talk about protein in a second, because I think there are a lot of myths and mistakes that people are making, or misinformation. But what would you say then is the role or how do you look at when you look at those macros? And of course we would add in like non-starchy vegetables, right? So adding that part on there.
All those.
Enjoy. Like our macros plus, right? And then what's the role when we look at that? So I'm very focused on total nutrition, recognizing that what goes in and on your body is going to be what informs what your body's getting, right? And so when we think about supplements in that space, you mentioned liquids. It could be, a powder or something that somebody's dropping into water or whatever beverage they're having. But how do you assess for that total nutrition, looking at the supplement side as opposed to the food side or in conjunction with? Yeah.
So I do provide a list of whole foods that I want them to focus on and pull from as much as they can. And so I think we've kind of seen with the if it fits your macros kind of approach, sometimes that can get a little bit unhealthy in the sense of just focusing on the protein, fats, and the carbs. And I'm really glad that you brought that up because it's not just about the macros. It is so much more. The micronutrition is so important. And so whether that is coming like from that variety, that is so important, whether we're talking about that or even just the whole food, even if it's similar foods, kind of for 1 week having, a couple of of choices of protein, maybe a couple of bigger choices of carbohydrates, but then changing it up on a semi-weekly basis just to get that variety. But definitely with the veggies, I'm very huge on the veggies. I consider myself, very much, I try to tell them, the recommendations for fruits and vegetables are 7 to 13 per day, and that's a big challenge to get those in. So, yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about protein. Our amino acids, obviously being the building blocks of protein. I'm particularly fascinated by glutamine and its role actually in the mucosal layer of the digestive tract, but obviously also it plays a key role in muscles. And we've always talked about that one being conditionally essential. When we're doing heavy strength training, heavy, or I should say intense for you, it might not be heavy, just intense for you.
Yeah.
We're tearing down those muscles. There's everything from recommendations to get in branched chain amino acids to adding a glutamine supplement to taking your protein up to 1.5, 1.7, 1.9, whatever in terms of. So talk a little bit about how you assess protein recommendations, and then if you split out different, if you're doing anything like branch chains during lifting or anything like that.
Yeah, so I will start with, I take the weight and kind of divide it by 2.2 to get the kilograms, and then multiply that by, the lowest that I'll go is usually 1.5, but sometimes I'll go up to 1.8, especially if they are someone who gets pretty hungry, just because they would be okay with a little bit less, but having that additional is not necessary, it's not going to hurt them. And I look at everybody individually with that. And so that a lot of times is a preference, a personal preference. But as far as adding additional amino acids, branch chain amino acids, if somebody wants to have those, I say that's okay, but I'm not going to prescribe them to have that. And so what we'll do generally is break down the protein throughout the day. And so I have people who want to get in just three meals a day. And so we work on that to try to get them balanced. But what a lot of my people do is around 3 meals and 2 snacks, or 2 to 3 snacks. And so with that protein, we're able to hit kind of no more than 30 grams or closer around 20, 25 grams. And so that allows the body to utilize all those amino acids. What I've seen with certain CrossFitters or lifters, kind of meatheads, is that they'll have a meal with 60 grams of protein or more. And really what the research shows is that your body's able to utilize, 30 is on the high end for a digestive period, so around 3 to 4 hours. So kind of breaking that down. Some of my clients, they do like to have, and we have them consume some whey protein either before or during or after if they want to do that. That's a great option for them. For a lot of for some of my clients in the past who've had digestive issues, branch chain amino acids work better. And so that would be a point where I would recommend it if they weren't able to have that full meal after, if they didn't feel like it, but they weren't able to digest that way, or if they didn't want an animal or a plant-based protein. And then for the evenings, I know a lot of my clients like to have some casein just because it is a slowly digesting protein. And so if they're working on building a lot of muscle, if that is their focus for 12 weeks or so, having that casein will help them while they're sleeping to get that steady stream of amino acids. And it tastes really good. So yeah.
I was going to ask that because I think one of the challenges that I've noticed from communication and just sort of following online is that a lot of people do get really hungry. So you were saying, it's a lot more, eating a lot more, but also this notion of maybe busting up some of the things, we say don't eat 3 or 4 hours before bed. And here we're talking about having the casein. So talk a little bit about, just the quantity that you might need, especially if you're in the building muscle phase. And then the second part, which would be that eating time period before bed, when it might be indicated that you want to have something closer to bed, and what would be a good choice. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yes, with the kind of when you're with the casein, what I really love about that is, so milk has two major proteins, so whey and casein. And that's part of what makes it perfect for babies, because those two proteins act differently in how they are digested. So the whey is very quickly digesting. That's what makes it not so good for a meal replacement, just because if you drink whey, you're probably going to get hungry pretty soon. And so that's why it's primarily recommended around workout times. Versus the casein, that's the opposite, and it takes several hours to kind of digest. And so in the evenings, that is a time where some of my athletes will have some whey casein, mix a little bit of like pudding with that and peanut butter, and it'll be kind of like their dessert, something that they really look forward to. It tastes delicious. Sometimes even a little bit of like Halo Top with it. So good. But yes, you don't have to eat, you don't have to stop eating at a certain amount. I always say, like, you should not be starving whenever we start working on your nutrition, and you don't want to be starving, because one, that's going to trigger your inner rebel, to where if something goes off track and if you maybe aren't able to get your planned meal, or even if you do have your planned meal, that's just setting you up for overconsumption. If it's not today, then, or tomorrow, then a couple days down the line. So really working to make sure that they're getting enough. Number two was that if they're getting too little calories, then their recovery is going to suffer, and even their performance is going to suffer in the gym. They're not going to be able to lift as heavy, move as fast, and that's not going to help you be a better athlete, and it's not going to help you show up as authentic as yourself. So.
Yeah. So what about some of the key, like the go-to tips, tricks for things like, okay, I tend to get cramping, right? Like I've worked out, the next day I'm getting some cramping, or said differently, I've had people who just say that like they have trouble falling asleep at night because they're like, even if they've done a power workout earlier in the day. So what are some of the things that you have to more like troubleshoot for in a plan as somebody, on a more individualized basis? Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing that I ask them is how's their water intake is. Usually that's what comes up first for cramping. Generally we get enough sodium, salt in our diets in America. But if somebody is eating if they want to eat very without a lot of added ingredients and without a lot of added seasoning, sometimes I have found that adding a little bit more salt is helpful, especially in the summer months when they're sweating a lot. And also magnesium for athletes who lift heavy. That is one thing, one micronutrient that sometimes it would be helpful to have a little bit of supplementation with. And then you mentioned like going to sleep if they're having some troubles going to sleep. And so especially if it's those two things, if they're getting cramps and having those problems going to sleep, then I would really suggest kind of getting a magnesium citrate supplementation, or if they want to get a little bit of Epsom salt and bathe in that, their skin can absorb some of that magnesium as well. But yeah.
Awesome.
Side note for magnesium though, it has a laxative effect if you take a little bit too much. So
it can really relax the muscles. Of course, in the Better Nutrition program, one of our favorite tools is the magnesium evaluation. So you can figure out, hey, am I getting in enough magnesium from my foods, and then add on top the supplement part. But you'll notice that Kat mentioned magnesium citrate. That's the form of the magnesium is going to be really important, because an oxide is just not going to do what you need to do recovery-wise. So I think that part is really important. Good. So some of the other questions that we get asked about in terms of strength training and doing that part are sort of like okay, but I still want to live my life. So, the alcohol, the coffee, some of the sugar. So if somebody, let's say that if somebody's working with you with a performance goal for strength training, for building muscle, performance related to their CrossFit, how do you help them draw parameters on consumption, whether it's the caffeine, the alcohol, or the sugar?
Okay. Well, I still have them drink caffeine as, and I mean, it's, unless it's really too excessive, I think, which is pre-workout. That's actually, I should have mentioned that before, but I do approach pre-workouts for athletes in the form of carbohydrates and caffeine. If you want to show up better in the gym, eating like a banana and having a cup of coffee, maybe not super close to when you work out, just because it might upset your stomach. There might be some GI distress with that. You might have to go to the restroom, but having a cup of coffee in the morning and some kind of carbohydrate, that's usually what I'll recommend for a pre-workout. And of course, a little bit of protein to help with that carbohydrate intake, to not just shoot up your blood sugar level and then drop it down. We don't want that. But not having so much fat before you work out or right after you work out is really good. So I should have mentioned that back when we were talking about how we kind of approach nutrition before and after workout and during the day. So I primarily have the rest of the fat throughout the day away from the workout. Okay, so then what was the question?
And then we get the alcohol and we get sugar. You know, it's like, come on, you know, totally.
Yeah, so if they do want, so I want everything to be realistic. In a perfect world, it's easy to say, here are your macros, here are the meal targets, go meet them, like go. But that's really why we have the coaching aspect of it, where we will have those weekly check-ins with clients, with those athletes, and see like, how did you do this past week? Like what are your wins? What were some of the challenges? What do you see as a challenge upcoming? Let's say they have their children's birthday party, or they're going on vacation or traveling or something like that. We'll work with them to see like what they can do and what they want to do and what is realistic, and make a plan with them individually. And then, you know, just check in with them and encourage them, you know, see how to go. So it's not like I don't have a set rule of, okay, you get one alcoholic drink per day on the weekend or something like that. I think it's very individualized.
Yeah, love it. So I was doing this awesome. I love this group that I get together with a couple times a year in terms of speaking. And this was, you know, maybe there were 100, 150 trainers in the room. And one of the guys said, like after the talk, and we were talking about digestive health and some of this others, he said, okay, I just kind of want to ask, because I have, you know, this woman. He's like, well, actually a lot of my female clients, like, they're just these times in the month, and we just all stopped, and all the women in the room like burst out laughing, because it was like, and he's like, and I was like, yeah, and it happens every month, right? And he's like, yes, you know. So it was so funny to watch him, you know, and a couple of the other guys, and they're like, we're not going to touch that, and I was like, well, you actually do need to touch that. I mean, we do need to understand. So talk a little bit about how, like, so. Like if it's the couple of days before your period, or you have your period, like, do you need to adjust should you not train? Can you train? What are some of the things that work better, you know, as we start to think about the hormonal side of things?
Yeah. So what I found is that there's a lot of more of a desire for iron-containing foods, so like red meat. And if there's an athlete who's a vegetarian or doesn't want to eat as much red meat, then making sure that they get some kind of iron and pairing that with some vitamin C to help that absorption, that bioavailability, definitely. But in the gym, a lot of athletes and women will notice that they are not able to lift as heavy. And so that is good to go into it knowing that, like, it's okay, you're not hitting your normal maxes. It's okay. Like, you're still in the gym, you're still training, you're still getting that, that movement for your nervous system, kind of getting that, the memory of that movement, working on the structure of that. So it's okay. You're not going to hit your maxes every day, even if you're not around your menstruation or your menstrual cycle.
So paying attention on that part. So one of the other questions that we've gotten is about fasting. So is there, you know, whether it's intermittent fasting. So, and again, guys, if you're watching, definitely highly recommend the interview on fasting with Kristen Kirkpatrick, because she talks about fasting mimicking diet and intermittent, etc. But some people would say, you know, that it makes a big difference there, that like people have said after maybe like Prolon or fasting mimicking, they've noticed that that's actually been favorable. Have you had any experience with people who are fasting and how it impacts their performance, you know, using it as a tool to improve performance?
Yeah, I have not actually. That is something that I haven't had people come in and ask me questions about that really. As far as like nutrition and training and performance goes. I will just normally tell them that, well, you have generally an 8-hour to 9-hour fast every day.
That's
go to
right.
sleep. So, but yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, and no apology. It's more I'm
going to watch that training.
We're curious, and I think different people are saying that. And thank you. We've got so Esmeralda said, "Yay, Kat!" And we also had Linda come on and said, "Oh, that's awesome." So she just found so the Better Nutrition program on Alexa, we have a skill called My Better Nutrition, and she was asking questions there. So maybe we can get some CrossFit strength training questions in there. So we can add some of that piece. So
so I love my co-owner actually for Iron Movement. Her name is Christina Spencer, and she is amazing. She is so strong. She is so powerful. I love her. And so she is the other half of Iron Movement, and she's done CrossFit for so long. And level 3 CrossFit trainer. And so what that means is she's there's a lot of really great CrossFit trainers, coaches that are, level 1. And then they go on to take another test and another seminar, kind of workshop and everything for level 2. And then level 3 is, I was looking at some of the stuff that she was kind of studying with and to prepare for her exam. And it was just so insane. Awesome. And so her and her husband are actually level 3 trainers in Kansas, in Junction City, Kansas. Okay. And so that's where we met. So part of the reason why we created Iron Movement last year was because I was moving, because my husband's in the Army, and we wanted a way to still work with athletes, and we work really well together. And so working on the behavioral side of nutrition coaching and really bringing more of the human aspect to nutrition and CrossFit athletes. And so it's that, reminding them it's not just about the macros, and we're not just going to give you a template and say, good luck.
Yeah. And that's so important. And so one of the other questions that came up that I promised that I would ask is around more weight and women getting bigger. So there are two sides to the coin. There are a lot of men who, despite lifting, are not getting where they're not developing. They're not feeling like they're able to develop the lean body mass that they want. And
are gainers.
Yeah, and then for women, there's a resistance to lifting heavier out of concern that they're going to have big shoulders or develop the muscles. So how do you? So is there any truth to the women getting bigger with adding more weight? So let's start there, and then we'll talk about the guys in a second.
Okay, so I wish I wish that I could have a little bit more muscles. It's a pretty big challenge for me to get a little bit more in my arms, but really, whenever you see the athletes who are very they do have very developed, or you can see there a lot of muscles. They are working in the gym for more than 2-3 hours a day, more than that. They are doing specific programming. They're doing cycles to where they're able to gain and then go on to maintenance, then do a cut to get some of the fat off that, and then do another cycle of gaining with the intention of putting on more muscle. A little bit more fat comes with that, maintaining there and doing a cut. And so they have been working consistently on getting that muscle. So unfortunately for me, it's not that easy. And it really is nothing to worry about. Yeah, for the women.
So for the guys then, so if you're a lean guy and you're trying, I've had guys say to me, like, do I have to turn to creatine or HGH, or something like that? What's the switch? Is it caloric? Is it the way the macros, or, could be digestive health? Like what have you noticed is really what will push somebody to that space of being able to start to develop the lean body mass?
Definitely the calories, first and foremost. Like if you're not getting enough calories, you're not going to be able to gain. But then those calories also, some of them can be a little bit more fun, especially for those guys who have really trouble gaining that extra weight. But making sure that their protein, kind of like how I mentioned before, is consistently spread out throughout the day, that they're not just getting 3 meals with 60 grams of protein. That's not going to be as beneficial as 6 meals with 35 grams of protein.
Got it. So note to everyone, you do have to be able to do some basic math or have a good calculator, that kind of thing available. But spacing it out, I always think that's just better, and that's going to address the digestive health. So I like that part. Another question that I got is a lot of times people will submit questions when they see who we're going to be talking to. So a woman who has an athlete as her son is 13. And there's a lot of discussion in school about CrossFit and about training and their performance. What are the sort of what's age appropriate in terms of recommendations around, and this was specific to CrossFit was what she asked the question. Yeah.
So for movement wise, because I am not a CrossFit trainer, I can't really speak on that, but I do know that like my gym back in Junction City, they have a kids CrossFit program. Are they lifting like giant weights? No, it's going to be more focused on them doing like burpees and working on pull-ups and doing body movement exercises, doing those sprints and maybe a little bit of wall balls with very light balls, that kind of thing. But there are, at the games, at the CrossFit games, there you get to see some of the teenagers with those heavier lifts and stuff. But because I am not a CrossFit trainer, I don't want to.
Totally get it. Thank you.
But as far as the nutrition side goes, whenever we do work with some of the younger athletes and children, I really try to stay away from talking about their weight at all and really just encouraging them to eat more of the rainbow and having fun with their food, getting more comfortable in the kitchen, preparing their meals so that they learn when they get older, really how to determine what foods make them feel good.
Oh, amazing. God, I have 1,000 different questions, but what I'm going to recommend to everybody else, which is to make sure to check out Iron Movement. They're also on social media. We'll be sharing that information as well. And Kat also has Unlocked Nutrition, so you'll see that I've been mentioning both of those and I think it's really important, to be able to work if your hyper focus isn't on the athlete side, but it's more on I'm trying to build better body composition and live healthier and find a sustainable way of working on my nutrition, definitely to check her out there. And for anyone who's watching right now and tried to grab the download, we will address that. Kat, can you, and it very easily could be, but tell me what the download is. Yes, we could, go ahead.
I switched my website from Squarespace last week to WordPress. So I got the Divi Builder and everything set up. I moved ConvertBox and everything. So there might be a mistake with that. So I will check that. But I've had that new website switch for less than a week. So.
For sure, Jen Barr will get that over to you. And Kat will send me the right one so I can put it into the YouTube so we don't have to worry about that part. But tell us just a little bit about that. So what is that that first part that you're offering to people, which is so awesome?
Yeah, so it's just kind of a way to kind of take the next step into learning out where you're really having struggle. So with the Unlocked Nutrition side, I work primarily with women, especially military wives, who have a history of yo-yo dieting and that weight cycling. And so there is that kind of balanced meal plan that I show, and then I show you how to create your own. And then I kind of go into kind of some of the more the triggers that kind of help keep us from being sustainable and from having that yo-yo diet roller coaster kind of thing. So
awesome. Great. So there is a free download. We're going to nail it. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook and you love what you saw, we'd love a thumbs up or a little review, and also to share this with anyone who you think it might be helpful for, maybe even another practitioner. If you feel like, hey, I've been telling my doctor about this CrossFit thing and they're not understanding it, or I want the school principal to hear a little bit about this part, whatever it is on that piece, please share the video and catch us back. We are here on Wednesdays and Fridays to do more Better Nutrition expert interviews. Kat, a total pleasure. I love catching up with you again. So thank you. And everybody can check you out at ironmovement.com. And the movement is MVMNT. And then also at Unlocked Nutrition. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.